and I start by tapping. And I start to make some music with the pen, and I'm having fun and I'm enjoying myself, then obviously for me, it can be considered something that is play. And that is the same with your children. You know, some of your children might spin wheels, they might have repetitive play, or they might line objects up. And although that might not be something that's considered as play to you, that might be something that's considered as play to your child. So we are going to look as to how we can actually use your child's own play and their own interests to actually further their learning and development. So then, what is play therapy? So obviously we've looked at play, but we want to know, you know, how is play therapy used and how does it benefit our children and what are our principles? So in play therapy, we have the belief that every child has the ability to learn, to develop, and to reach their full potential. They just need to be appropriately facilitated. In play therapy, we hold each child with complete positive regard. We don't focus on the negatives, or my child has this problem, this problem, this problem. We accept the child as they are, and we're very, very attuned to what are their positives, what are their negatives. And we also help the child to realize this so that they can have the drive to actually reach their full potential. So in general, we accept the child for who they are, and we follow the needs and the interests of the child through play, which is your child's natural language. And we allow them the freedom to express and explore, which essentially aids their learning and their development. So through play therapy then, we can develop logical and creative thinking, which is obviously working on your child's cognitive ability. We can improve fine and gross motor skills. We can develop language and communication. We can work towards relationship building, which helps in developing social skills and group skills. We can aid with social, emotional, sensory, and behavioral difficulties that your child might be facing. So then what is the purpose of this webinar series? Essentially, the purpose is to kind of empower you as parents to be able to take play therapy sessions with your child and to help your child develop the skills that we have just mentioned. So we want to help you to understand the current stage of play that your child is at and help them to progress to the next level, and to help you to use play and play therapy to further your child's holistic learning and development. So what will you get throughout this webinar series? So it will be a series of 6 live audio-visual webinars. You'll get opportunities to ask specific questions in relation to your child, and you'll get access to the PowerPoint presentations and additional resource material following each webinar. So what will we cover? So in the first session, we will be providing an introduction to play therapy and guidelines to starting your sessions at home. So we'll be looking at more of the key principles of play therapy, the kind of the do's and don'ts, just getting started at home. We'll be looking at the language, we'll be looking at the materials, and we'll be looking at the kind of stages of play that we can address throughout play therapy. In the second session, we'll be looking at sensory play. And sensory play is kind of the most underused, but the most important type of play. It is the foundation for not just play, but for all kind of learning and development. So we'll be looking at the importance of sensory play. We'll be looking how it can be used to help your children actually connect to the environment, as I said, for the basis of their learning, their development, their communication, their interactions, and their understanding of themselves as well as the social world. Obviously, we'll also be talking about sensory issues and how we can address sensory issues through sensory play. We'll be looking at sensory play in relation to hyperactivity. We'll also be looking at sensory play in relation to passiveness, when your children have very little connect or engagement in the environment. And we'll also be providing you with a resource book with lots and lots of sensory materials and sensory ideas to actually get started with that sensory play. We'll also be looking at how sensory play can be used to encourage relationship building, eye contact, interaction, language development, and so many more things that we will discuss more in the sensory play session. In the third session, we will be looking at the projective and role play stages of play, which follow on from, which work as kind of a pyramid with the sensory play at the bottom, then projective play, and then role play. So in these sessions, we will be discussing the kind of the toys and materials that you can use for projective and role play, as well as looking at specific play techniques that you as a parent or therapist can use. We'll also be looking at the benefits of projective and role play. These can be in terms of language development, non-verbal communication, relationship building, logical and creative thinking, imagination, abstract thought, problem solving, emotional understanding, and again, so many more things which we will discuss in the projective and role play session when we look at these stages of play. And we will also be talking about how we can encourage the child to kind of move up the ladder and progress through these stages of play, which is essential for the kind of the child's maturation and essential for the child in helping them develop their identity and help them in develop these kind of lifelong skills. Because as I said, it's important to note that play is not just play. The skills and what we learn through play is kind of vital to our development, and they are lifelong skills that we are learning. Okay, so then in the fourth session, we will be looking at ritualistic and repetitive play patterns. Many of us may think that our children can't play, or they have repetitive play, or they just do the same thing over and over again. And often we will see this as a negative thing. So what we will be looking at throughout this session is actually how we can gain some, kind of have some positive impact on our child by tuning into their ritualistic and repetitive play patterns rather than just trying to stop them. Because we have to appreciate that even if your child does have a repetitive play pattern, there's one advantage there already, and that's the fact that your child is actually engaged in something and they are actually playing. So if we try to stop that and remove that away from the child, then obviously we are preventing the child from actually having that engagement. But rather what we can do is we're going to look at how we can actually use these ritualistic or repetitive play patterns as a way to actually enter into your child's world and then work to further expand their world and expand their play skills and expand their interests. We will also be looking at particular techniques where we can actually work to help the child in breaking these patterns and obviously gaining more interest and more insight into the play world, as well as working on building the relationship with the child by being attuned to the child's interests. Okay, so in the fifth session then, we're going to look at child empowerment through play. And that is how we can actually empower our children through play to be more independent, to be more active, to engage in self-determined decision making, and to actually, want to engage, to want to connect, to want to interact. We want to empower the child to actually want to learn, to want to develop, and to actually kind of move forward and progress. So we're going to be looking at how we can empower children through play and how we as parents can work to empower our children. And we'll be paying special kind of attention to the kind of language that we use with our children to make sure that we are actually we will be looking at things like motivation and self-esteem, and looking at how we as parents can actually work to empower our children with the help of play. Then in the sixth session, we will be looking at the idea of helping the child to build resilience, developing their emotional regulation, and developing life skills through play. As I said already, the skills that children do learn through play are skills that are going to be with them through their life, essentially. For example, if a child cannot interact or play with others, then it's going to be very unlikely that the child is going to want to interact with others in any kind of social situation. Or if your child is very, very rigid in their repetitive play patterns, then the child is likely to be very, very rigid in real life and find it very, very difficult to accept changes in real life situations. So we'll be looking at specific techniques in which we can actually work with the child to help them develop these skills, such as acceptance of others, such as acceptance of change, such as reducing their rigidity, increasing their adaptability, increasing their flexibility. We can also work with children to help them further with their emotional understanding, helping them to understand and learn techniques in which they can actually regulate their emotions through play. So like I said, when we look at play, it's very, very important to understand that it's not just play. Play is actually very, very important to the kind of your child's lifelong success, as well as their kind of learning and development at their current stage. Okay, so that's kind of a brief overview about what we will be covering in the webinar series. So after this webinar is finished, you will be sent an online registration form to register for the webinar series. And there is a special introductory rate until the 31st of December. Limited places are available, and these webinars will be held fortnightly from January. Okay, so do we have any questions?
So you can put the questions in the chat.
Hi, Priya. Yes. Play therapy can be used for children of all ages. Because what's very, very important to notice is that these stages of play don't necessarily have any boundaries or any age restrictions, because very, very often we find that a lot of the lower level grounding foundation stages of play have actually been missed out, which is something that actually hinders the child's long-term development. So we can have children, for example, that I've worked with at 15, 16 years old, even adults at 14 years old, which we've had to go back and start at the sensory stage of play, and which has actually worked on really amazing results for their learning and their development. So play therapy doesn't have any kind of any issue that your child has at whichever age. The idea of these sessions is to actually empower you to work with your own child, essentially, to provide you with the principles, the foundation, and the techniques in which you can actually start to work with your own child. Give me a second, I'm just viewing the questions. Okay, the sessions, a question about the timings for the sessions. So these sessions will be held fortnightly at the same time at 11:30 on Sunday mornings. If you happen to miss a session, the sessions are also being recorded. So if you miss a session in the series, then Jasmeet will make that session available for you to view.
Will you be sharing references? Sorry, Lucy, I was reading out the questions for you, so you don't have to scan them. Will you be sharing references for reading books for play therapy?
Yes, after each webinar, then I will be providing you with some resource materials to assist you with implementing whatever we have covered in that webinar. And yeah, resource materials, this could be booklets, this could be reading materials, this could be activities. After every webinar, there will be some material available to you.
So is play therapy for children with ADHD, learning difficulties, and anxiety issues?
Yes, play therapy can use with children with any difficulty. It can also be used with neurotypical children as well. And depending on what are your child's issues, pretty much everything should be covered throughout the webinar series. The principles of play therapy can be applied with all children, and in terms of things like ADHD and learning difficulties, ADHD, we will be looking at hyperactivity, how to reduce hyperactivity through play. We will also be looking in terms of learning difficulties, how we can further the child's learning and development through the use of play.
So the question from Priya is, does it involve enlisting volunteers like Sunrise? Who will deliver the sessions? What would be the time commitment ballpark?
So the purpose of the webinar is to empower you as parents to actually be able to work with your own children. In terms of the time commitment that you have to give to working with your child, that's entirely up to you. You could work with your child every day, or you could assign just one half an hour, 1 hour session in a week. It's really dependent on your own time. It's very, very flexible. But obviously, the more time that you are going to give, then the more your child is able to benefit. But it's not necessarily limited or restricted, because obviously, as a parent, you have other commitments as well. But it's just so that you can use the principles and work them with your child whenever you do have the time, essentially. And you'll also be learning certain skills and certain techniques, which you can just use on a daily basis and integrate into kind of parental skills booklet, should we say.
How do we assess the outcome?
The outcome, essentially, you will for sure basically see when you start to see the improvements on your child. So it could be dependent, if your child is very, very hyperactive, you might find that your child is starting to calm. If your child has no connection or no engagement to the environment, then you'll find that your child will actually start to connect more to the environment, to be able to independently engage, to show interest to activities. You can see improvement in language development. You can see improvements in their verbal and non-verbal communication, in their eye contact, in their interaction. There's just so many benefits that your child can get from play therapy in terms of every area of their development, even their physical, their fine motor, their gross motor, their cognition, their engagement, their play skills, as I said, the social skills, eye contact, everything we can work on simultaneously with the child through play therapy, as well as kind of their emotional regulation, pretty much everything.
So if we miss the series, are there sessions periodically held so that we can catch them in future?
Yes, we should be planning in the future. And as I said, the sessions are going to be recorded. So these can also be made available if you miss one or two of the sessions in the series.
Can we substitute OT with play therapy?
Again, it depends. It depends on what your child's difficulties are. I can't necessarily offhand say you should stop OT. Again, many occupational therapists have undergone my play therapy training and integrate principles of play therapy into occupational therapy. I have had many parents who have withdrawn from OT and withdrawn from speech because they have seen more improvements in play therapy. But really, it does depend on what your child's difficulties are and what you are working and trying to actually achieve with your child. The play therapy most definitely complements all types of therapy and can be used to improve the physical as well as the language. But there are certain things that we don't include that obviously speech therapists and occupational therapists do include in their sessions, more kind of specialized techniques that they might use in terms of given pressure or motor activities and things like that we don't necessarily include in play therapy. Use principles of play therapy to kind of make these exercises and activities more fun and more stimulating for your child.
Should we involve parents during the therapy?
Yes, it's definitely very, very beneficial for you as parents to be involved in play therapy when we are working with special needs children, because as much as possible, we want parents to actually understand how they can engage with their own children, how they can use play to further their learning and development, and how they can actually use the same techniques as we use in therapy sessions in the home setting as well. So obviously, the more that these principles are applied and the more that we are using play to further the child's learning and development, the more successful it's going to be.
Do you issue a certificate after completion of the series?
I think we would be issuing a letter of completion of the modules that have been completed throughout the webinar series. We just have to confirm with you on that.
So about workshops in various parts of the country, I'd like to say that Lucy is currently in Sri Lanka. And so that is part of the reason why we came up with this idea of having a webinar for parents to understand what are the kind of methodologies that they can use to help their child. So how would you customize it according to the child, Lucy?
So basically, we'll be providing you with the overall principles of play therapy. We'll also be talking on an individual basis about the different stages of play and how you can actually understand what stage your child is at. Once you're able to understand at which stage of play your child is at, then and once you are able to listen to me when I talk about specific issues, and obviously if these issues relate to your child, then you'll be able to pull these bits away from the webinar and actually start to apply them with working with your own child, especially in terms of the type of play and the type of materials and the type of techniques to use. But the general principles, and when we're looking at child empowerment and the language that we use and things like this, these are principles anyway that can be applied with every child regardless of their issues. And also, as I said, you will be given the opportunity to ask questions at the end of each webinar. So that should hopefully help you in clarifying as well whether these the things being discussed directly relate to your child or how they can be implemented with your child. Because often many of you anyway will have similar questions and concerns that we can address together.
What kind of symptoms in child where play therapy helps more?
Play therapy can help with a wide range of things. It can help with any kind of developmental delay or difficulty. It can help with hyperactivity. It can help with passiveness. It can help with anxiety. It can help with stress. It can help with behavioral issues. It can help with emotional issues. It can help with sensory issues. Play therapy can pretty much help whatever issue that your child is facing. The purpose of play therapy essentially is that it is child focused. And as much as possible, it should be child-led. So the idea is that we are tuning into the child's interests and to the child's needs and helping the child to reach their full potential by using a medium that is of most interest for the child.
So Bhavna, this seminar, these workshops, online workshops are going to be covered with a lot of demonstration by Lucy, along with she'll share videos to get the idea of how a parent should be working with the child. What kind of materials would be needed for play therapy sessions? Are they easy to get, economical?
Yes, most things are very easily available. We'll also be giving guides. Give me 1 second. We'll also be giving guides about, how you can make things like sensory bottles, how you can use kind of everyday household materials, so that the thing is that we want to make play as most accessible for everyone. As I showed you, we can turn a pen into a play activity. So it's not necessarily that you have to go out and buy the whole contents of Amazon. We will be talking about how you can use kind of everyday and low-cost materials to actually work with your child as well. And I also can provide you with lots of links to where materials, recipes for certain materials and handmade materials and things like that, which can also help economically wise.
So will you be showing us the material and how it to be used?
Yes, in each session, everything that I discuss with you, I will. I have my own materials are here, and through every session, every example I'll be given, I will be having the materials here and giving this practical demonstration via the video link. And then afterwards, I will also provide you with some lists and some links where materials can be purchased.
in India, can you suggest a place where we can buy a play therapy material?
I said it's. I purchase a lot of my stuff in India just from the regular supermarkets. You know, things like sensory balls and things that can just be purchased from the everyday supermarket. A lot of materials from fancy stores, which are very, very cheap. You know, basic cars and things. They don't have to be expensive toys. Musical instruments and things. A lot of these things have just been purchased from local crafts markets. These puppets and things that I have, these are purchased from Amazon. Yeah, these are generally where we get most of the things from. And pretty much everything is available within India itself and at pretty reasonable prices. And on top of that, we will be looking at the kind of principles anyway, so that you can apply the principles with the materials that you already have for your children and that you are actually already using. It's not necessary that you have to go out and buy specific toys or materials, because, as I said, pretty much anything can become play, and it's more about the attitude, the animation, the fun, and kind of understanding of the child's interest that actually make things play and make it actually enjoyable and productive for the child. It's not necessarily dependent on having expensive toys or anything like that.
Would it address peer play and generalization also?
Yes, we will look at how interaction, social skills, and group skills are developed through play. And I can provide you with some materials in terms of group play as well. And we will discuss this a lot more, especially in the sensory play session.
How would you be able to help us learn in sense of practical approach online?
So we'll be talking about the difficulties that your child will be facing. As I said, I have all my toys and materials here, so I'll be regularly giving practical examples of techniques that you can use with your own child. And if it's appropriate, I might also show some videos. And obviously, you'll be talking about specific issues, but everything that we talk about will be accompanied with practical examples by me. It's not that I'm just going to talk. It will be very, very much me giving practical demonstrations that you can start to implement then at home with your own child. And obviously, you will have the chance, as I said, to ask questions at the end. So if you know your child is facing a difficulty and you want an example of how you could use this approach with your child, then again, I can provide that example at the end of the session.
Is there any difference in play therapy from special children's and normal ones?
Play therapy can also be used as a counseling tool. There's two ways in which you can use play therapy with a regular child, essentially. So the principles that we are looking at play therapy throughout this webinar series although it's titled as special needs, essentially we are looking at developmental play therapy. So we're looking at ways in which we can further the child's learning and development through the use of play therapy. And that obviously will work with neurotypical as well in terms of their learning and development. What we won't be covering in this webinar series is looking at play therapy more as a counseling tool, because we can also address children's regular children's emotional issues. We can look at things like abuse and trauma. Although this will be touched on briefly, things like anxiety and things will be targeted. We won't specifically be looking at trauma and abuse and things throughout the series of webinars, which is something that play therapy can also be used for with regular children. But obviously that's not to say that special children or some kind of abuse. And in terms of their play skills, and when we look at sensory play, this will also be touched upon as well.
So would you be showing us live demos when you present online?
No, I will be showing practical examples with the materials, but not with children, as it goes against the kind of ethical principles of play therapy.
Would the intent be filling the gaps in the play development that got missed?
In the play development, but not just in the play development, because as I said, when we're looking at the 3 stages of play, the sensory, the role play, and the projective stage, these are actually looking at the founding blocks for all of the child's interests, their connection, their interactions, their identity formation. So yeah, we'll be looking at gaps that have been missed in their play, but also how these gaps can also result in the child's maybe anxiety, or maybe in their sensory issues or their behavioral issues. And yes, we'll be looking at how we can go back and how we can kind of rebuild that and give a solid foundation, which can therefore aid with all of your child's future learning and development, as well as their play skills.
So thank you so much, everyone. Lucy has tried and answered each one of the questions, and we will shortly mail you the details of the series of the webinars. And please try and register before the 31st and take the benefit of early bird discount. Lucy, any last words from you?
No, just thank you all for listening. And yeah, just please, even if you don't want to come and attend the webinar series, please do appreciate the value of play and play with your children as much as possible, because there are just so many benefits that come from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, so much for being with us today. And thank you, everyone, for taking time and being here with us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.